Hi everyone, welcome to our module on hypothesis testing. So let's imagine that a cardiologist discovers a protein level that may be elevated in myocardial infarction patients, and he calls this protein MI-zyme, and he wants to use it to detect heart attacks among patients in the ER. So in order to see whether or not this might be useful for detecting heart attacks, he samples levels of MI-zyme among 100 normal subjects and also among 100 subjects with a myocardial infarction. The mean level in normal subjects is 1 milligram per deciliter, and the mean level in myocardial infarction patients is 10 milligrams per deciliter. So the question is, can this protein level, can this enzyme level test be used to detect myocardial infarction in the general population based on these two samples he drew up here? So another way to think about this question is, does the mean value of MI-zyme in normal subjects truly differ from the mean value in myocardial infarction patients? Or was the difference in our little experiment simply due to chance? There was definitely a difference in the mean between the 100 normal patients and the 100 heart attack patients, but maybe we just got lucky, and if we repeated it, we would not get that difference in means. So whether or not this difference is real or due to chance depends on three important factors: the difference between the mean values between the normal and MI patients, the scatter of the data points, and the number of subjects tested. And in the next few slides, I'm going to go through this to help you understand how we use hypothesis testing to determine whether differences between means are true or due to chance. So let's talk about the scatter of the data first. So let's imagine we plotted the MI-zyme level on the x-axis here, and on the y-axis we put the number of samples that were estimated at a particular level. So all the normal patients are represented by black dots, and most of the normal patients had levels way down over here around 1. Their mean is right here at 1, and the data are sort of scattered around that mean. All the MI patients had mean values that were much higher. Remember, it was 10. They're represented by these red dots, and so their mean is right here, and they're scattered about the mean. Well, it's very likely that these two differences are real because the scatter of the data in the two groups is very far apart from one another. In other words, the means are very far apart relative to the scatter in the data. It's pretty unlikely that the MI patients have the same mean level as the normal patients and that we just got lucky and pulled all these samples over here out for the MI patients. Because of how far apart these two groups are and how tightly the data points are collected around the means, it's very likely that this is a real difference. On the other hand, let's suppose the data looked something like this. Well, now we've got a lot more scatter. So even though the normal patients have a mean value that's far away from the mean value of the MI patients, there's a lot of scatter and this data overlaps a lot. So now we begin to wonder, with this much scatter in the data and this much overlap, maybe the differences between the two groups were due to chance. And maybe if we collected more samples, we'd find that the means really aren't different. So the key point here, and what I'm trying to show you pictorially, is that the scatter of the data points influences the likelihood that there is a true difference between means. What statisticians do is apply numbers to the scatter of the data and use those numbers to estimate the likelihood that the difference between these two means is real and not due to chance. Another factor that influences the likelihood that the difference in the two means is real is the number of samples. So let's look here at this picture on the screen. The normal patients and the MI patients do have some overlap of data, but we have a lot of samples, and you can see that there's a high density of samples of normal patients way over here at this mean, and a high density of the red MI patients way over here at this mean. So these two means are more likely to be truly different because we've got a lot of samples and they're really clustering far apart away from one another. So the key point here is the number of data points also influences the likelihood that there's a true difference between means, and we can be more confident when we detect a difference when we use a lot of samples. So hypothesis testing is to mathematically calculate the probabilities, like 5% or 50%, that the two means are truly different and not just different by chance in our experiment. The math is very complex and you don't need to know it. This is why we have statisticians to help us out. But what you should understand is that the probabilities by hypothesis testing depend on the difference between the means, the scatter of the data, and the number of subjects tested. And that's what I was showing to you in those graphs on the previous few slides. So let's go back to our experiment and recall that when we tested the MI-zyme levels on normal patients, we found a mean value of 1. And when we tested it on heart attack patients, we found a mean value of 10. There are two possible explanations for the results of our experiment. Possibility number one is that MI does not distinguish between normal and MI patients. If this is true, the difference we saw between groups of 1 and 10 was by chance. The true means are actually the same, and we just got a fluke measurement that showed these two numbers to be different. Possibility number two is that MI does distinguish between normal and MI patients, and that the difference that we saw is real. We call possibility number one the null hypothesis, and we represent that by H sub 0. We call possibility number two the alternative hypothesis, and we represent that by H sub 1. So in reality, one of those two is correct. Either H0 or H1 is correct. In our experiment, we're going to decide that either H0 or H1 will be deemed correct. So hypothesis testing is going to determine the likelihood that our experiment matches with reality. So there are four possible outcomes of our experiment. Possibility number one is that there is a difference between the two means in reality, and our experiment detects this. This means the alternative hypothesis H1 is found to be true by our study. Possibility number two is that there's no difference in reality, and our experiment also finds no difference. This means the null hypothesis H0 is found true by our study. Possibility number three is that there's no difference in reality, but our study finds a difference. So this would be an error. This would be an erroneous finding of our study. And we call this type of error a type 1 or alpha error. This means you believe there's a difference, but there isn't one there. And then possibility number four is that there's a difference in reality, but our study misses it. So we think that the two means are equal, but actually they're different in reality. This is also an error, and we call this a type 2 or beta error. Each of these four outcomes has a probability of being correct based on the three things I talked about before: the difference between the means in the two groups, the scatter of the data, and the number of subjects tested. Once again, you don't have to know the math of how to calculate the probability, but you should know that it's based upon these three items right here. So the four possible outcomes of our study are generally written in a 2x2 table like this. So reality is put along the top. This is the truth. This is whether there is a real difference between the means. And H1, or the alternative hypothesis, is right here. So this would mean that in reality, the two means are truly different. And H0, the null hypothesis, is over here. So this would mean that in reality, there's no difference between the means. Our experimental findings are written over here on the side. So we've got H1 at the top. This means our experiment finds a difference between the means. And H0 right here, which means our experiment does not find a difference between the means. So if there is a difference between means in reality and our experiment finds it, that is called the power. It's easier to think of the power as a number. So imagine that we had 80% power. That means we've got 80% ability to detect a difference that truly exists. Now, statisticians like to think in terms of the null hypothesis. So the null hypothesis says that there's no difference. So if you want to think of it that way, the power is the likelihood that you will reject the null hypothesis appropriately, meaning you reject it when you should reject it because it's wrong in reality. In the top right of the 2x2 table, we have the likelihood of an alpha error. That means that we detect a difference, but it's not real, that it's not there. In the bottom left, we have the beta error, the chance that we'll find no difference when in actuality there is one. And I've summarized these things down at the bottom. So the power is the chance of detecting a true difference that exists. Alpha is the chance of seeing a difference that is not real. And beta is the chance of missing a difference that is really there. And one thing you should know is that the power is always equal to 1 minus the chance of a beta error. Now, you can memorize this if you wish, but just think about it realistically. If the chance of a beta error is 5%, what's going to happen the other 95% of the time? Whatever's up here. In other words, if in reality there is a difference between the two groups. In other words, if in reality H1 is correct and you're going to miss that 5% of the time, it means you're going to get it right 95% of the time. So the power, or whatever is in this top left quadrant here, is always going to be equal to 1 minus whatever's in this bottom left quadrant here. But if you want to just memorize it, know that the power is equal to 1 minus the probability of finding a beta error. So let's talk about power in a little more detail. As I said before, it's the chance of finding a difference when one really exists. We like to do experiments that have a high power, so it means that they're very likely to detect real differences. You can also think of it as the chance of rejecting no difference because there really is one. This is also called rejecting the null hypothesis. And it's very high yield to know the things that increase the power. So power is increased when you have more samples. So if you see a small difference between groups, but it's not statistically significant, it may be that you need to collect more samples. You can be more confident in a difference you find between groups when you have lots and lots of samples. If the difference between the means is very far apart, this increases the power. And if there's less scatter of the data, in other words, if you have more precise measurements, this also increases the power. And the way I always do this is just picture those charts I showed you before. When the data is very scattered, that hurts the power. When it's tightly collected together, that helps the power. Same thing with sample size and same thing with the difference in the means. So when we conduct experiments, we want to maximize our power to detect a true difference. We don't want to spend a lot of time collecting data and find no difference when actually there was one there and we just missed it. It's a waste of our time. We want maximum power. Now, in a study design, you usually don't have a lot of control over the scatter of the data or the difference between two means. Think about our experiment on MI-zyme. The MI-zyme levels are going to be what they are in normal subjects, and in heart attack patients, you don't really have control over where the means lie and how much the data is scattered. You do, however, have control over the number of subjects. You can decide ahead of time how many people you are going to sample. So when people conduct a study, they determine how many subjects they're going to need to give them a high enough power. And this is called a power calculation. You don't need to know how to do this, but for example, when you see a clinical trial of a drug, usually ahead of time, they made an estimation of what the scatter and the difference between the means would be, and then they calculated how many patients they would have to recruit in order to have a high power to detect the difference. Nobody wants to conduct a large clinical trial with thousands of patients over many years and then find out they didn't recruit enough patients and they didn't have enough power to find a difference that was actually present. Finally, in this module, let me give you a little more detail on the two types of statistical errors. The first type is a type 1 or alpha error, and this is a false positive result. This is when our experiment finds a difference or effect, but in reality there isn't one. Another way to think about it is this is when we reject the null hypothesis, but we shouldn't have. For example, if researchers conclude that a drug is helpful to patients, but actually the drug is not helpful. And in general, we don't reject the null hypothesis unless the alpha error is 0.5 or less. We want the alpha error likelihood to be very low before we're going to reject that null hypothesis. In many ways, the alpha error is similar, although it's different from the p-value. The p-value is something that's calculated by comparison of the means, and the alpha value is set by the study design, but they both operate in similar realms. In other words, we like to see the alpha level very low before we're willing to accept a study result as true. In the same way, we like to see a p-value very low before we will accept that a difference is real. And the second type of statistical error is a type 2 or beta error. This is a false negative result. This is when our experiment finds no difference or effect, but in reality there was one. The statistician way to word this is that this is when we accept the null hypothesis, but we shouldn't have. And an example of a type 2 error is when researchers conclude a drug does not benefit patients, but a later study finds that it does. The first group of researchers had a type 2 or beta error, a false negative result. And one thing that's important to know is you can get type 2 errors if you have too few patients. You need a lot of patients to have a power to detect a statistically significant difference. If you have too few, you'll often see no difference when you may in fact be making a type 2 or beta error. And that concludes our module on hypothesis testing.